Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Orlando. My name's Michael Lewis. I'm a member of the congregation and worship volunteer. We welcome all to join us as we explore our Unitarian Universalist faith, which draws us into a community of justice seekers with a commitment to lifelong spiritual growth and compassionate service to the community. In today's service, we will explore what lessons can be learned from the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and other civil rights associates. There we go. If you have joys and concerns to be included in today's service, you can put them in the chat or send an email to programassistant1u@gmail.com. For more information about our congregation, go to orlandouu.org or email welcometeam@orlandouu.org. Or join us after the service in our usual fellowship where we gather with each other and chat. One of the breakout rooms is the Welcome Center, where you can bring any questions you have about our church. The meeting number and passcode are on your screen, which will be repeated at the end of worship. All are welcome. Before we get into upcoming events, Reverend Margalie has an important COVID update. Reverend Margalie?
So, as you know, we jumped right from yellow to red, skipping orange completely, and we were all so excited to be back in person, and we're now having to do service completely online. And so the reopening task force got together and tried to look at our DO policy to see how we can make it possible for us to be able to be in person in Orange. And they came up with a new policy that they've proposed to the board, which changes so that we can actually meet in person when we are in Orange, which is different from our previous policy. But this will require a couple of things from all of us, right? So we'll continue to have to register, as we have been doing for in-person, for contact tracing, and also for space. But the most important thing in this policy is that we will need for people to show proof of being fully vaccinated and boosted if they are eligible to be boosted. And definition of fully vaccinated, you'll find it on the website, as you will also find more information and more details about these new changes to the policy, including social distancing will be 6 feet when we were doing 3 feet previously. And just for everyone's precaution, this is not part of the policy necessarily, but we are just, we are strongly recommending that people use N95 and KN95 masks, just for your own precautions and for everyone else. Okay.
Thank you for that update, Reverend Margalie. Our announcements for today all have links in the weekly update or on our website. The 6th Annual Interfaith Yoga Project, celebrating Martin Luther King, will take place online today, beginning at 4 p.m. It's not too late to register. And this is not moving.
Can I help?
Yes, it's not moving.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Like 2 fingers like this.
Yes. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Registration for the 2022 series for Paganism 101A, Unitarian Exploration of the New Paganism, is now open. Classes take place on the 4th Sunday of the month at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Zoom. The series of 9 classes starts on January 23rd. It is open to new and experienced pagans. Please consult the weekly update for registration details. Based on the current COVID numbers, the 1U Garden Committee workday set for Saturday, January 22nd has been canceled. But we hope you will consider joining us the next time around on February 26th. And in the meantime, individuals are always welcome to stop by and check out the 1U Garden. Nancy Bauer recently donated a wooden raised bed that will allow us to contribute even more fresh produce to the community. If you have questions about the garden or would like to sign up to help, please email garden@orlandouu.org. While we're on the subject of COVID numbers and cancellations, the drive-through event for RE families to pick up February's Soul Matters activity kits has also regretfully been canceled. But we will be sending kits through the mail. Please be on the lookout for instructions on how to get kits for your family in the RE newsletter later this week and on the RE Facebook page. Would you like to help in worship in small ways at your convenience? We are looking for people to sign up to be on our worship helpers list. Worship helpers light and extinguish the chalice, or read through these weekly announcements as I am doing right now, or might be given a small poem or meditation to read. You can let us know what Sundays you are available and what you'd like to do. Or, for ultimate flexibility, put your name on the list, wait for a call from one of our worship team members when a need arises, and let us know if you're available or need to pass. There are no scheduled meetings, and while we're doing services online, you will come to the sanctuary to read in a safe, socially distanced way. Children who are able to read can sign up with a parent. This is an easy way to start participating in church life while deepening your UU faith. Please email Linnea at worshiporlando.uu.org to learn more and add your voice. Finally, if you are interested in learning more about First Unitarian Church of Orlando, are you curious about how Unitarian Universalism might deepen your spirit? Are you wondering what membership involves and if membership is a next step for you? If your answer is yes to any of these questions, you may want to attend the Winter-Spring 2022 Path to Membership Series being offered by the 1U Membership Committee. These information sessions provide an opportunity to meet Reverend Margalie and members of the congregation and to decide whether you want to join them on your faith journey. There is no obligation to join the congregation, but there will be guidance on how to do so if you're ready. Due to COVID protocols and safety concerns, these sessions are being held via Zoom. Our first session, Conversations with the Minister, is today from 11:30 to 1 p.m. In this session, meet Reverend Margalie Belizaire and learn more about UU principles, sources, and covenant. Bring your questions and meet other seekers. Please contact members at orlandouu.org if you have any questions about membership series. And now, let us worship together.
I call us to worship this morning on the eve of the federally recognized Martin Luther King Jr.'s Day with the words of Andrea Hawken Camper, "Be about the work." May we see all as it is, and may it all be as we see it. May we be the ones to make it as it should be. For it is not, if it is not us, then who? If not now, then when? This is the answering cry of justice with the work of peace. This is redeeming the pain of history with the grace of wisdom. This is the work we are called to do, and this is the call we answer now, to be the barriers on the bridge, to be the living embodied of our principles, to be about the work of building the beloved community, to be a people of intention and a people of conscience. Come, beloveds, let us worship together.
We light our chalice today with these words from Rebecca Savage. We light our flaming chalice as a beloved people, united in love and thirsting for restorative justice. May it melt away the tethers that uphold whiteness in our midst. May it spark in us a spirit of humility. May it ignite in us radical love that transforms our energy into purposeful action. This is a chalice of audacious hope. This chalice shines a light on our shared past, signaling our intention to listen deeply, reflect wisely, and move boldly toward our highest ideals. And now, please join me in singing, with muted mics, our opening hymn, "Oh, I Woke Up This Morning." The words will be projected on the screen.
I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. I was walking and talking with my mind. It was stayed on freedom. Walking and talking with my mind. And it was stayed on freedom. Walking and talking with my mind. And it was stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. I was singing and praying with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. Singing and praying with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. Singing and praying with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Oh, I woke up this morning with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
Hi, I'm Reverend Kirsten.
And I'm Jennifer Allen, and we are members of this church.
We wanted to talk with you a little bit about our experiences attending Black Lives Matter protests in the summer of 2020. It's hard to remember maybe that long ago time, early pandemic. Feels like ages ago now, but we were seeing protests happen here in Orlando related to the murder of George Floyd in the Twin Cities. And we knew that we wanted to be involved, that we wanted to be out in the streets with our community, voicing our values and showing our opposition to racism and violence in our country. But we were also experiencing a pandemic and not really knowing as much as we do now about coronavirus and how it was spread and what it would mean to catch it. So we were weighing a lot of factors in terms of whether we wanted to physically participate in those protest moments.
I was also surprised to see the larger Orlando community actually be so involved in these protests and seeing people come out in large numbers. I was glad to see that and definitely pleasantly surprised. Or the other thing we thought about was our daughter. We want her to also live her values and feel like she can speak up whenever she needs to, whenever there is some injustice or anything that affects her directly or indirectly. I guess we're all connected somehow. So if one of us is not doing well, all of us are probably not gonna do well. Yeah, we just wanted her to feel like she could be a part of it and have that experience for herself.
But we were also a little anxious about it because she was not quite 3 years old at the time. And we didn't want to put her in any sort of risk with the pandemic, but also in terms of police violence that was happening at protests like this around the country. So we ended up deciding to take her with us to the first protest that we went to down at City Hall. And we agreed that we would sort of stay a little bit separate from the crowd and like in any protest that you attend, keep an eye out for what was happening with the police.
Behind you.
Knowing when we should leave quickly and making a plan to do that if we needed to. And it was really beautiful to be there with her and to watch her take that experience in. For many months afterwards, she wanted to repeat the chants and songs that we heard at that protest here in our house. She organized her dolls to play protest. She made protest signs. She wanted to talk a lot about it with us. Why did we go to that protest? Who was George Floyd? What does it mean to march together? And so Jennifer and I worked hard to answer those questions for her in age-appropriate ways, while also weighing the fact that she is a Black child and how much do we want to expose her to the realities of racism and the violence that follows it here. We chose to really emphasize our values with her and what pieces of the protest lifted up the world that we want to live in, as opposed to emphasizing what we were.
The reasons for why we were out there, right?
Right, yeah.
The violence and the racism and the...
Right.
Yeah.
I think another thing that was really beautiful to see, Jennifer and I also attended another protest without our daughter that was much larger and involved a lot more marching. And it was so beautiful to see the ways that that protest community supported the people there. That was the most masks I had ever seen anywhere in town since the start of the pandemic. People were universally wearing masks. They were handing out masks to people who didn't have them. There were people handing out food and water. There were people marshaling the protests, like keeping everyone safe from cars and knowing where to go. And I think it's just so beautiful to watch, even in a moment of devastation for many people, for our community, to see those values and the world that we want to live in lifted up in really real ways. I know that there was a lot of concern about whether people would catch COVID at these protests, and that did not manifest because everyone was being so conscious of caring for each other. We also took our daughter to a kids protest, a family protest later, and that was also really beautiful to be part of, to see how they incorporated story and music and art into that opportunity for children, and the way that they really made it clear that members of our community of all ages are needed in the work for justice and in the work for racial justice, and that children's voices and opinions and artwork are just as important as adults when we're working towards the world that we want to live in. Our daughter made a protest sign that was really like scribbles, and she just held it up just as proudly as the rest of us with any other sign that we had made. And I feel really good about our decision to include her in those moments with us as a family. So I guess we just want to finish by saying that we know that living through a pandemic or living in a pandemic time doesn't mean that we can just drop our values, that we can just leave behind our most closely held beliefs in the community that we want to live in, the way we should treat each other, the way that we believe the world can be. And so we just have to figure out how to make those moments be safe or safer in the midst of a time that's really uncertain. But we also know that pandemic time has been harder on people of color in this country, particularly on Black people, particularly on poor people, particularly on people with disabilities. And so there's still so much to lift up our voices about. So I feel really privileged that we were able to do that as a family.
That was beautiful to listen to and to watch. As we make space for the joys and concerns of this congregation, I invite you to join in the communion of names and add in the chat the names of those who are on your heart this morning, whether due to a joy or a sorrow. Bring all your joys and all your sorrows as we come together. Come as you are. Your whole self is welcome in this sacred space we are creating together. I bring into this space the words I prayed recently at an MLK event slightly modified. May we find what we need in them, and the spoken words will be followed by silent contemplation. Spirit of love, Spirit of forgiveness, Spirit of beginning anew, let us gather in gratitude for the life of Martin Luther King Jr. Let us be thankful for his ministry and the example he set before us on living a life of purpose, his example of justice work. Spirit of love, help us to understand, as he did before us, that we each have a role in justice work, for our liberations are tied to one another's. Give us the clarity of mind to know what our individual part is in the struggle, that there are many ways to protest injustice. Help us to find our own way and commit to it. Spirit, be with us as we reflect on the moments when we might not have been our best selves. And we gather at the beginning of a new year, leaving behind one full of pain and suffering on many levels for so many people. Many suffering from food insecurity and lack of housing, others alone and isolated by a pandemic that has taken the life of so many. Others still constantly in fear, either that they themselves will catch COVID or their beloveds will contract it. Under such stress on our minds, our bodies, and our spirits, we fall short at times to get it right, to have each other's backs, to be patiently and fully present, to love radically, to follow MLK's example. Spirit of forgiveness, we ask for grace for all those times, for all those moments. May we make amends whenever we have the opportunity, and may we begin anew with the commitment to do better. May we rest in love, and may we engage others lovingly and compassionately. May it be so. Join me now in singing our next hymn, which I find quite soothing and meditative, the hymn Meditation on Breathing. Words will be displayed on the screen.
When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out.
So thank you so much for just agreeing to talk with us at First Unitarian Church of Orlando about just your experience as far as living a purposeful life. And if you could start out with introducing yourself to us, please.
You know my name. I'm James Perry. I'm a native of New Bern, North Carolina. Graduated from St. Augustine's University in 1966. Drafted in the military in 66. Decided to attend law school at Columbia University in 68, 69, 68, when Dr. King was killed. Graduated from there in 1972. And my whole purpose of going to law school was to, here we go, is to make this world a better place. I sort of dedicated my life to public service.
And if you could tell us a little bit, I understand you had a part in Black lawyers in Georgia being able to take the bar exam. Would you tell us a little bit about that work?
Well, actually, we were allowed to take the bar exam. When I graduated from Columbia in 1972, my plan was to move back to North Carolina, which is my home state. And I found that there was a bar there. There was obviously a bar in the whole South to keep Black lawyers out of the legal system. Because once we had a voice on our perspective, it would mitigate against the systemic structure that was set up. So they figured the way to, they called it social engineering, to keep that out and to maintain their place in their heritage was to not to have an advocate that for African Americans. So I decided to move to Georgia after North Carolina and South Carolina had bars. Once I got to Georgia, I met Maynard Jackson, who was the vice mayor at the time. And he was also a lawyer. He had a 7-person law firm. And I told Maynard, I didn't know him, knocked on his door, cold call. And he accepted me, and we gave him an hour audience on a Friday afternoon. And he said, well, I told him the problem had in North Carolina and Georgia. He said, we don't have such a problem in Georgia. We normally pass 3 Blacks a year, the one that graduated from the University of Georgia, one that graduated from Emory, and one other. So I said, wow, that's me. So we proceeded to find a place where I would live. So I went through my strategic planning, and I picked Augusta, Georgia, which is right on the border of South Carolina and Georgia, which is closer to North Carolina. That was my plan. So fast forward, applied for the bar exam. I sat for it, me and 49 other African Americans. A couple of weeks, I received the results, and I failed. After doing a check of all of the graduates, none of them passed. We're talking about graduates from Harvard, Yale, top law schools in the nation, and they passed 750 whites. My solution was, let's file a lawsuit. And fortunately, I had classes with Jack Greenberg, who was the director of NAACP Legal Defense Fund. And the suit was filed in November of 72 in the Federal District Court of Northern District of Georgia in Atlanta. In order to mitigate the damages, we had to sit for the exam again. I could only get 16 of the 50 to join in the suit. They say we're afraid. After sitting for the exam in February of 73, they passed 11 of the 16 plaintiffs, including me, and 13 others. That June, they passed another 24 Blacks. At the time, there were 42 Black lawyers in the whole state.
So, having the courage to, even with, I'm pretty sure, with courage doesn't mean that there isn't some fear there of repercussions. You did this thing, and who knows how long this system would have continued to be in place if you didn't move forward and actually sue to make it possible for other Black lawyers to be able to pass the exam. And I'm saying pass in quotation mark, right? Because obviously it sounds like it was a system made to keep Blacks from passing the exam.
Well, that was throughout the South, and courage. I didn't see it as a courageous thing. I went to law school to fight injustice, and I figured I had no choice but to do that. And I guess having been in the military as a first lieutenant during the Vietnam crisis, I sort of dealt with my sense of mortality. And so I just did it. It was just, if I won't defend myself, how can my clients think I would defend them?
When you introduced yourself, you didn't give yourself full justice, pun intended. You didn't mention that you were a justice on the Florida Supreme Court justice. So if you could talk a little bit about that work there. And I understand at that time you were only the second.
I think I was the fourth.
The fourth.
There were 3 ahead of me.
Got it.
At the time, there was only one on the bench, a female, Justice Peggy Quince, who's a good friend of mine. So I didn't think I would be appointed, to tell you the truth, because, the theory is we have our one, and but it happened anyway.
How was that work for you? What was challenging, but also what felt really good about doing that work?
And actually, when I was asked to join the Supreme Court, I sort of pushed back. I said, no, I don't want to move to Tallahassee. And they said, well, what's wrong with Tallahassee? I said, nothing, man. You know, I'm a Magic Season ticket holder, and I have office overlook Lake Monroe, yachts, and etc. I can handle my docket. I was just reelected without opposition for 6 years. So I'm okay here. And they said, well, it's not really about you. So I said, you're right. It's not about me now. It never has been about me. It's about trying to do the best I can for people that look like me and other people less fortunate. Hardest ever work in my life. You would think as you go up the ladder, the work will be easier, but it is. The converse is true. You know, I was able to make a difference, and we were able to make a difference then, as opposed to now. We have the most conservative court in the history of the state of Florida, and they are strictly corporate oriented, and they could care less about the consumers and the people.
It sounds like we've gone backwards instead of forward in this area.
Absolutely gone backwards. The more things change, the more they remain the same.
This month, we continue to support our January Share the Plate partner, One Heart for Women and Children, an organization particularly close to my heart. If you would like your donation today to go to Share the Plate, please make sure to indicate your intention by writing Share the Plate in the text or on the memo line of your check. Today, Stephanie Bowman, the founder and CEO of One Heart, has joined us to discuss the organization's mission and needs. Stephanie?
Thank you so very much for allowing me to be here today. And as it was said earlier, love radically. Like, that is my sole mission, and I believe that that's my purpose in life today. So I want to ask 3 quick questions before I share about One Heart. And one of them is, when you think about your favorite memory growing up, like, we all have different ages where our favorite memory was, so kind of think about what that favorite memory is. The second question is, what is your legacy? As we all think about different legacies, you know, again, we think very differently about what that means and what we were taught that that meant. The third question is, when you think of somebody being hungry, homeless, addicted to drugs, running from the domestic violence, with children, what does that look like to you? Again, it looks very different for many of us. I want to say that 23 years ago, that was me. I was running from the domestic violence. I didn't know where to go. I had 2 young children, and we were homeless for about 5 weeks here, less than a mile and a half from where we are right now in the church. There were people that were praying for me. There were people that already had started planning on what they were going to do and how they were going to assist me in helping us to get to that next place in life. They found us. They helped us with that. And 8 years later, I started a nonprofit organization called One Heart for Women and Children, and I had no idea what that was going to look like day to day, but I don't think that that's really what I was meant to see at that time. It was really that I was called to help other people that were in places like I was at that time, that were homeless, they were hungry, they were in a place of transition, whether it was a man, a woman, a child. So at One Heart for Women and Children, we are transforming lives, one woman, one child, one family at a time. And what does that look like? It looks very different for each person coming in. Although every person that makes their way to One Heart, we help them with food, fresh produce, fresh foods, clothing, other immediate resources. We can help with counseling and other outside resources. What we're doing is we are encompassing as a whole that mind, body, spirit, and helping them to transition from that to that next place where they're looking to be or where they maybe once upon a time were. So there's many different ways that we can, that people can help us at One Heart. We are helping over 20,000 people each month with food and other resources. It's $1 per person, our cost, to be able to help one person with enough food for 12 to 16 meals. And a lot of people, when they hear that number, they're like, how in the world can you do that? So I invite you to come in and take a look, or look at the website and see exactly how that looks. So we help to provide the food 4 days a week at One Heart. We're working 7 days a week, almost 100% volunteer-based, and 7 days a week, meaning we still have resources that we take out to the community, and people that still come into One Heart on our off hours and off days. We do not turn our backs or do not say no if we have the resources at our home base, which is in College Park. We have a thrift store that's open on Saturdays, always looking for volunteers to help pick up furniture or to donate items at our thrift store on Saturdays. We also have a mobile food distribution 1 month. It's one Wednesday every single month. It's typically our third Wednesday of the month. It takes 100 volunteers to make that happen. We're also always looking for sponsors to help financially support that day. In 4 short hours, we're giving away anywhere between 32,000 pounds of food up to 78,000 pounds of food. It's a semi full of food that goes out that day. Also looking for volunteers as we are hands-on in a few different shelters. They're shelters that I lived in with my children many years ago. So it was really, really important for me as I graduated or transitioned through those programs years ago that I always was giving back there. As our clients walk through our programs at One Heart, many of them, after they've transitioned and now they have a job and they're back on their feet, they come back and they volunteer their gifts, their time, their talents, and also financially. So I want to ask if there is a piece of any of what we just talked about that you would like to be a part of. We invite you to come and be a part of. During the pandemic, we went from helping, prior to the pandemic, we were helping about 3,000 people each month. Pandemic hit, we were helping over 20,000 people each month. Last month in December, it was 27,132 people that were able to receive resources from One Heart for Women and Children. And that is because of our volunteers, our partners, our donors. We cannot do it alone. We were never meant to do it alone. We were meant to do this together. So our tagline really is, which piece of the puzzle are you? And One Heart for Women and Children, our logo is made up of many different pieces of that puzzle. So I invite you to be able to look at the website, see how you would like to get involved, and we would love to have you be a part of One Heart for Women and Children. So thank you very much for allowing me to be here today and helping me to live out that dream. Have a beautiful day.
You can contribute to, thank you, Stephanie, by the way, that was beautiful. You can contribute to the many ministries of this congregation by clicking the donate button in the upper right-hand section of the 1U homepage, by writing a check made out to First Unitarian Church of Orlando, or by sending a text following the instructions in the weekly update.
Sharing one last video with you, this one by the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., and just a brief warning that during the initial 50 seconds of this recording, violent acts are described and the N-word is also used. So during the first 50 seconds.
But I never will forget one night very late. It was around midnight. And you can have some strange experiences at midnight. The telephone started ringing and I picked it up. On the other end was an ugly voice. That voice said to me in substance, "Nigger, we are tired of you and your mess now. And if you aren't out of this town in 3 days, we're gonna blow your brains out and blow up your house." I'd heard these things before, but for some reason that night it got to me. I turned over and I tried to go to sleep, but I couldn't sleep. I was frustrated, bewildered. Then I got up and went back to the kitchen and I started warming some coffee, thinking that coffee would give me a little relief. Then I started thinking about many things. I pulled back on the theology and philosophy that I had just studied in the universities, trying to give philosophical and theological reasons for the existence and the reality of sin and evil. But the answer didn't quite come there. I sat there and thought about a beautiful little daughter who had just been born about a month earlier. We have 4 children now, but we only had 1 then. She was the darling of my life. I'd come in night after night and see that little gentle smile. And I sat at that table thinking about that little girl and thinking about the fact that she could be taken away from any minute. And I started thinking about a dedicated, devoted, and loyal wife who was over there asleep. She could be taken from me, I could be taken from her. And I got to the point that I couldn't take it any longer. I was weak. Something said to me, "You can't call on Daddy now. He's up in Atlanta 175 miles away. You can't even call on Mama now. You got to call on that something and that person that your daddy used to tell you about. That power that can make a way out of no way." I discovered then that religion had to become real to me, and I had to know God for myself. And I bowed down over that cup of coffee. I never will forget it. Oh, yes, I prayed a prayer, and I prayed out loud that night. I said, "Lord, I'm down here trying to do what's right. I think I'm right. I think the cause that we represent is right. But, Lord, I must confess that I'm weak now. I'm faltering. I'm losing my courage. I can't let the people see me like this, because if they see me weak and losing my courage, they will begin to get weak." It seemed at that moment that I could hear an inner voice saying to me, "Martin Luther, stand up for righteousness. Stand up for justice. Stand up for truth. And lo, I will be with you even unto the end of the world."
I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us. So lift me up to the light of change. There is hurting my family. There is sorrow in my town. There is panic now across the nation, and there's wailing the whole world round. But I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who came before us. So lift me up to the light of change. May the children see more clearly. May the elders be more wise. May the winds of change caress us, even as they burn our eyes. But I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us. So lift us up to the light of change. Give me a mighty yoke to hold my confusion. Give me a desert to hold my fear. Give me the sunset to hold my wonder. Give me an ocean to hold my tears. For I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us. So lift me up to the light of change.
Wow. I was speaking with Gabby, our program assistant, this past week, as I do every week, to check in, to get updates on projects, to discuss. During our conversation this past week, Gabby, who is quite generous about sharing good information she comes across with our 1U church community here, mentioned that she came across a documentary film festival in celebration of Martin Luther King Jr., or the holiday anyway, for this weekend. Of course, I agreed to having it posted not only on our website, but also in our weekly update, or rather Facebook, but also sent out in the weekly update this past week. We went on to talk about Dr. King, and I at some point remarked that all that I have to hear is his voice to start emoting, to put me in a certain mind and heart space. It's not always important what the message is, and I don't have to hear the whole message. Thankfully, the words that follows, that powerful voice, are also powerful. Much later, I continued to ponder on this, and I even wondered, is that his public voice, or is that how he speaks naturally? For example, that speech we just heard earlier, would he have sounded like that if he was speaking to his wife, Coretta? I've been told that I have a prayer voice, and maybe even a preaching voice that's different from my normal voice. But I sense for MLK, I sense that it's more than that. There's an expectation and a weight that accompanies the hearing of that cadence. Maybe it's the grieving of the loss of a life that brought so much hope to so many. A life that was cut short. A grieving of the loss of what it might have meant to the world if that life had been allowed to continue flourishing. I imagine others feel that way too, because Martin Luther King Jr. is such a part of the fabric of this nation and is revered around the world. Is that what it means to have been made a martyr? I find that it's important to consider this because as we look at the deeds he accomplished during his short life, it is apparent that he lived a life of purpose. He advocated for those living in the margins, including many with whom he didn't have a shared identity, or at least not so obviously, him having been marginalized himself as a Black man. As we've heard him testify in the recording, it was work he felt called to do, and he would do this work even though he knew fighting for justice would put his life at risk, knowing that every time he engaged in racial justice, he could be killed. Still, he did just that. He also shone the light on the conditions under which the poor and the economically challenged were living, and took on many other issues, including the Vietnam War. He was not looking to die, but he was willing to do so because the work was that important. Something else about Dr. King's justice work is that it was grounded in his spirituality and his religion and the larger than life thing that he believed in, so that when in the middle of the night, evil came knocking and he was troubled and sleep would not come, when he was afraid of losing his beloved wife and daughter and leaving them husbandless and fatherless, or when he was in need of courage for all those who depended on him to be strong, he was able to ground himself and connect to what gave him life and energy to continue in the work. That was an intentional choice he made to believe in that something larger than himself. For him, it was the Christian God. For you, for me, for someone else, it might be something completely different. But without that connection to a source, I don't think he could have accomplished all that he did. More significantly, I don't think he believed he could have done any of it alone. I mentioned earlier that I felt it was important to consider what it means to be made a martyr, but I think a better consideration is what it means for us to see someone as a martyr, however appropriate the title is. True, Gandhi, Jesus, Dr. King were all killed for their beliefs. But as martyrs, do they become something other than humans who lived a life and made intentional choices to, as MLK said, and please pardon the ableist language, to stand up for righteousness, stand up for justice, stand up for truth? Do they in our minds rise to the level of super beings and therefore less accessible to us? Consequently, we are less likely to see ourselves capable of doing what they did. In Reverend King's Midnight Prayer, we see a worried man who loves his family and is afraid that his choices could be putting them and him at harm's way. A man questioning if he is courageous enough to do what he feels he is called to do, dealing with insecurity and wanting mama and daddy to make it all better. In other words, we see a fellow being behaving as a human who is experiencing a crisis after all, considering all who is dear to him is being threatened. There is no difference from what Justice Perry did, suing the Georgia bar in search for fairness for Black attorneys of that state, or for Stephanie Bowman from One Heart, who after herself needing help, started an organization that now supports others. Or Jennifer and Reverend Kirsten deciding to join their community to protest against injustice, which came at a risk during the pandemic, and worrying about what to teach their young daughter about living their UU values. Stephanie, Justice Perry, the Allens wanted to make their communities better and to make the world a better place. Similarly, Dr. King's desire to be on the side of righteousness, justice, and peace. That's what motivated him. That's what ought to motivate us to live a purposeful life. Now, how you show up for justice, how I show up for justice, does not have to look like how somebody else does. It is our responsibility to figure out what our role is in the struggle, to figure out how we can help bring about the beloved community that Reverend Dr. King spoke about, and what our aspiration is in our sixth principle, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. But if we place MLK and others in the realm of superhumans, we do him and all of his efforts a disservice. And it is hard to see ourselves following his example if we think someone needs to have super strength to do so. So let's celebrate the life of Dr. Martin Luther King. Let's honor him and even lament what we might have lost. But let's continue the work to bring about the beloved community. And I will end with the lyrics of our closing hymn, which I hope you will join me in singing shortly. All are architects of fate, working in these walls of time, some with massive deeds and great, some with ornaments and rhyme. For the structure that we raised, time is what materials filled. Our todays and yesterdays are the blocks with which we build. Build today, then, strong and sure, with firm and ample base, and ascending and secure shall tomorrow find its place. And now, please join me in singing our closing hymn, All Are Architects.
All are architects of fate, working in these walls of time, some with massive deeds and great, some with ornaments of rhyme. For the structure that we raise, time is with materials filled. Our todays and yesterdays are the blocks with which we build. Build today, then, strong and sure, with a firm and ample base, and ascending and secure, shall tomorrow find its place.
And we will close with one of my favorite quotes by the words of Reverend Joseph M. Cherry. If we have any hope of transforming the world and changing ourselves, we must be bold enough to step into our discomfort, brave enough to be clumsy there, and loving enough to forgive ourselves and others. May we, as people of faith, be granted the strength to be so bold, so brave, and so loving. Beloveds, worship has ended, and now the service truly begins.
We extinguish the flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
One more step, we will take one more step, till there is peace for us and everyone. We'll take one more step.